The desert holds secrets like a miser clutches gold coins. For Aila Redfeather, those secrets began with her mother's worn leather diary, discovered in a cedar chest after the funeral. Inside, faded ink drawings mapped a journey to somewhere unmarked on any modern chart. At 13, grief-stricken and alone except for an aging grandfather, Aila traced her fingers over her mother's handwriting. Why had her mother never spoken of this place? The diary contained no explanations, only directions leading deep into Apache ancestral lands. What truth awaited in that hidden village that was so important, her mother kept it secret her whole life? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Dawn painted the reservation in copper and gold. Aila Redfeather rolled from her narrow bed, the floorboards cool against her bare feet. 3 months since the funeral, and still she expected to hear her mother's voice calling her to breakfast. Instead, only the rhythmic tap of her grandfather's walking stick echoed through their small home. Tap, 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 the sound of waiting. Of patience weathered by years. You'll be late for school, he said, not looking up from the battered coffee pot. His weathered hands curled around the carved cedar stick propped against his chair. Eagle, bear, and mountain lion spiraled up its length, telling a story only he fully understood. I'm moving, Aila muttered. Pouring cornflakes into a chipped bowl, Grandfather Haman watched her with eyes like ancient obsidian, sharp despite his 82 years. Your mother would want you to keep up with your studies, the familiar weight of those words. Everything now measured by what her mother would want. At school, Aila moved like a ghost through fluorescent-lit hallways. History, mathematics, literature, all seemed pointless against the empty space her mother had left behind. Only Miguel Ruiz, who'd lost his father 2 years prior, seemed to understand the hollow feeling that followed her. You're coming to my house after school, right? Miguel nudged her during lunch. My mom made tamales. Aila nodded, grateful for the distraction. Miguel's mother had appointed herself unofficial guardian of Aila's nutrition, convinced that Grandfather Haman couldn't properly feed a growing girl. Later, walking home from Miguel's, Aila took the long path through the junipers. The setting sun stretched her shadow across red dirt, tall and distorted, like a stranger walking beside her. Once her mother had told her that shadows contain pieces of a person's spirit. That's why they follow us everywhere, she'd said, to make sure we're never truly alone. What had happened to her mother's shadow? Grandfather sat on the porch, carving another notch into his walking stick. One for each day since she'd been gone, though he never admitted it. Sit, he said, patting the step beside him. Aila obeyed. The wood, warm against her legs. Your mother used to look at the sunset just like you do. His voice softened when he spoke of her. Always searching for something. What was she searching for? The question hung between them. Grandfather's hand stilled on the walking stick. Some questions don't have simple answers, he said finally. Some truths are better left buried, like Mom. The words escaped before Aila could stop them. Pain flashed across Grandfather's face. No, little one. Your mother is not buried. She has returned to the earth as we all will be. But she never told me anything, Aila whispered. About where we came from. About her life before me. Grandfather's grip tightened on the walking stick. Some stories are not ours to tell until the right time. When is the right time? You will know. He tapped his stick against the porch boards. Now help an old man inside. My bones argue with me at sunset. That night Aila dreamed of canyons and hidden pathways. Of her mother walking ahead, always just out of reach. She woke gasping, the dream whispers echoing, Find me. Find what I couldn't tell you. Days blurred together, school, Miguel's friendship, Grandfather's increasing frailty. The reservation clinic suggested tests at the hospital in town. But Grandfather refused. I have seen enough white coats in my lifetime, he declared, until the morning Aila found him collapsed beside his bed, the carved walking stick just beyond his outstretched fingertips. The ambulance came with wailing sirens that sent reservation dogs into frenzied barking. Paramedics spoke in clipped, urgent tones. Grandfather looked small on their stretcher, his dark skin ashen. "You can't ride with us," they told Aila. "Someone needs to stay and lock up the house." Miguel's mother arrived in her battered pickup. "I'll take you to the hospital after we secure everything," she promised, hugging Aila tightly. Alone in the suddenly empty house, Aila moved through rooms that held the weight of generations. The responsibility of safekeeping fell heavy on her 13-year-old shoulders. That's when she noticed the cedar chest at the foot of Grandfather's bed. Its brass latch had broken in his fall, the lid slightly ajar, revealing secrets her mother and grandfather had kept buried for years. The cedar chest creaked as Aila eased it open wider. Dust motes danced in the slanting afternoon light as she knelt beside her grandfather's most private possession. She had never seen him open it in her presence. "I shouldn't," she whispered to the empty room. But her hands moved of their own accord. Inside lay the remnants of lives carefully preserved, a bundle of weathered letters tied with faded ribbon, a small beaded medicine bag, her mother's high school graduation tassel, a folded American flag that had covered another grandfather's coffin long before Aila was born. Beneath these treasures, something caught her eye, a rectangular edge of worn leather. She tugged gently, revealing a hand-bound book, its cover soft with age and handling, her mother's diary. Aila's hands trembled as she opened it. The first page bore her mother's name in careful script, Aila Redfeather. Below it, a date from 20 years ago and words that made Aila's heart skip. "I will find the path back, no matter how long it takes." The sound of tires on gravel jolted Aila from her trance. Miguel's mother returning. Hastily, she closed the chest, but not before slipping the diary beneath her shirt. Pressed against her racing heart. Hours later, in the sterile glare of the hospital waiting room, Aila sat hunched in a molded plastic chair. Miguel's mother had gone for coffee. The diary burned against Aila's skin, both comfort and accusation. "Your grandfather is stabilized," the doctor finally reported. "Dehydration and exhaustion, complicated by his age. We'll keep him overnight for observation. Can I see him?" "Briefly." "He's sedated." Grandfather Hyman looked ancient against the white hospital sheets, oxygen tubing snaking across his face. His eyelids fluttered as Aila took his hand. "Little bird," he murmured, using her childhood nickname. "You must not go looking." Aila froze. How could he know about the diary? "The past is dangerous," he continued, words slurring. "Promise me." "I promise," Aila whispered, the lie bitter on her tongue. Back at Miguel's house, where she would stay the night, Aila claimed exhaustion and retreated to the guest room. There, by flashlight beneath borrowed blankets, she opened the diary again. The pages revealed her mother's neat handwriting, interspersed with detailed sketches. Landscapes, rock formations, constellations, and cryptic symbols Aila didn't recognize. Coordinates and directions filled the margins. References to Shadow Canyon appeared repeatedly. One page held a faded Polaroid photograph. Her mother as a teenager, standing beside a distinctive mesa, her smile bright with youth and possibility. The back bore a single line, the gateway to what was lost. Aila studied the image, memorizing every detail of her mother's young face. Who had taken this picture? What gateway? What had been lost? Flipping through more pages, patterns emerged. This wasn't just a diary, it was a map. A deliberate record of a journey her mother had taken again and again. Near the middle, a page was dated just months before Aila's birth. The last trip. Too dangerous now with the baby coming. One day, when she's old enough to understand, I'll take her there. But that day had never come. The final entries, written during her mother's illness, were shaky but determined. No strength to go myself now. But Aila must know someday. The burden cannot die with me. Sleep eluded Aila. Dawn found her red-eyed but resolved. The diary described a 3-day journey on foot through remote canyons. With careful planning, she could make it there and back before anyone realized her true destination. When Miguel's mother drove her to the hospital the next morning, Grandfather seemed stronger, color returning to his face. "The doctor says I can come home tomorrow," he told her. Just an old man's foolishness, forgetting to drink enough water. His eyes narrowed. You look troubled, little bird. Just tired, Aila replied, avoiding his gaze. That afternoon, while Miguel's mother worked, Aila and Miguel walked to her grandfather's house to collect clothes and school books. I need to ask you something, Aila said as they approached the small dwelling. Something important, Miguel kicked at a stone. You have that look. The one that means trouble. I found something my mother left for me. She pulled out the diary, showing him the photograph. I need to find this place. Miguel studied the picture. That could be anywhere in the canyons. I have directions. Aila hesitated. But I have to go alone. Absolutely not, Miguel said. Your grandfather would kill me. Then my mother would bring me back to life just to kill me again. I'll be careful. 3 days, that's all. I'll tell everyone I'm staying at your cousin's place in White River. This is crazy, Miguel protested. You can't just wander into the desert based on some old diary. But Aila was already inside, packing a backpack with essentials, water bottles, dried food, her mother's Swiss Army knife. A first aid kit matches. At least let me come with you, Miguel finally conceded. Recognizing the determination in her eyes, Aila paused, weighing her desire for solitude against practical concerns. Okay, she agreed. We leave at dawn. Pre-dawn painted the desert in silver-blue light as Aila shouldered her backpack. She'd left a note on her pillow at Miguel's house, staying with cousin Lena in White River for a few days. Back Friday. Tell grandfather not to worry. Miguel waited at their meeting spot, the old water tower at the reservation's edge. His usually cheerful face was serious beneath his faded Arizona Diamondbacks cap. Last chance to be sensible, he whispered. Glancing back toward the sleeping community, Aila opened the diary to a dog-eared page. The first landmark is something called Grandmother Juniper. According to Mom's notes, it's about 4 miles east, near Split Rock Canyon. Miguel nodded. I know that place. My uncle takes me hunting there sometimes. They set off in silence, their shadows stretching long across the sand. The morning air still held the night's coolness, but Aila knew the mercy wouldn't last. By noon, the desert would show its true nature, merciless and unforgiving of mistakes. 2 hours later, they stood beneath an ancient juniper tree, its trunk gnarled into impossible shapes by centuries of wind and weather. A massive exposed root twisted upward from the sandy soil, pointing like a gnarled finger toward the rising sun. This has to be it, Aila breathed, comparing the scene to her mother's detailed sketch. Grandmother Juniper. Miguel touched the root tentatively. My people say junipers are wise ones. They remember everything they've seen. Aila ran her fingers along the weathered wood. I wonder if it remembers my mother standing here. According to the diary, they needed to follow the direction of the pointing route until they reached a formation called 3 Fingers Mesa. The distance was marked as half a day's walk. By midday, the heat had become a physical presence, pressing down on their shoulders and baking the ground beneath their feet. They rationed water carefully, seeking patches of shade for brief rests. There, Miguel said suddenly, pointing toward the horizon where a distinctive mesa rose from the landscape. 3 tall spires of red rock jutted skyward like accusing fingers. 3 fingers, Aila checked the diary. Mom's notes say we need to go through the pass between the middle and right fingers. The mesa was still miles away, shimmering in the heat haze. We'll camp at the base tonight, Miguel decided, wiping sweat from his brow. Trying to navigate that pass in the dark would be stupid. As the sun began its descent, they found a sheltered alcove at the mesa's base. Miguel gathered sparse brush for a small fire, while Aila studied the next pages of the diary. The writing gets strange here, she said, frowning at the pages. Mom mentions watching eyes in the stone and those who remember. Ghost stories, Miguel scoffed. But Aila noticed how his eyes darted toward the deepening shadows. Night fell like a curtain, stars igniting across the vast dome of sky. The fire cast dancing shadows against the red rock wall behind them. My dad used to say the stars are windows, Miguel said softly, looking upward. Windows where our ancestors watch us. Aila followed his gaze. Do you think my mom is watching? Definitely. Probably saying, "What is that crazy daughter of mine doing?" They both laughed, the sound strange in the empty landscape. "Why do you think she kept this place secret?" Miguel asked. Aila closed the diary. "I don't know. The last entries talk about a burden and those who must remember. But remember what? Maybe we should turn back," Miguel suggested. "This feels bigger than us." "I can't," Aila replied. "Not when I'm this close." They settled into their sleeping bags, the fire burning low. Aila dreamed of her mother walking ahead of her through a narrow canyon, always just out of reach, despite her calls. She woke with a start. Moonlight silvered the landscape, and for a disorienting moment, Aila thought she saw a figure watching from the ridge above, a silhouette against the star-strewn sky. She blinked, and it vanished. Dawn arrived with a spectacular palette of orange and pink washing across the stone spires. As they packed their gear, Aila noticed something she'd missed in the darkness, small stacked stones marking a trail toward the pass. "Cairns," Miguel explained. "Trail markers. My mom mentioned these." Aila ran her finger along a diary entry. She writes, "Follow the stone guardians. They have stood watch for generations." The passage between the stone fingers was narrow, barely wide enough for them to walk single file. Wind whispered through the gap, creating an eerie, hollow sound like distant voices. "I don't like this place," Miguel muttered. "It feels like we're being watched." Aila felt it too, an awareness in the silence, as if the very stones held their breath as the strangers passed. But she pressed on, one hand trailing along the ancient rock wall, following her mother's path into the unknown. Beyond the passage, the landscape changed dramatically. The open desert gave way to a labyrinth of slot canyons, cutting through towering sandstone walls. Wind-carved arches stretched overhead, filtering sunlight into dappled patterns on the ground below. "Which way now?" Miguel asked, voice hushed in the cathedral-like space. Aila consulted the diary. "Mom's map shows we follow this canyon until it branches. Then take the right fork toward something called Whispering Walls." They moved cautiously, the canyon floor littered with fallen rocks and desert scrub. Birds darted through the heights, their calls echoing strangely in the confined space. "Look," Miguel pointed to the canyon wall where faint red handprints had been painted centuries ago. "In the Zazi markings." Mom mentioned these. Aila traced the diary's sketch of identical handprints. She called them the ancestors' blessing. The temperature dropped as clouds gathered overhead, unusual for the season. Wind began to funnel through the canyon, carrying the distant scent of rain. "We need shelter," Miguel said, eyeing the darkening sky. "Flash floods in these canyons are no joke." They quickened their pace, searching for higher ground. The first heavy drops struck just as Miguel spotted a narrow opening in the canyon wall. "There!" he shouted over the rising wind. They scrambled toward it, rain now falling in earnest. The opening revealed a shallow cave, its ceiling blackened by ancient fires. "Perfect timing," Aila gasped as they ducked inside. Rain now sheeting down the canyon walls. Water began to flow along the canyon floor, quickly rising from trickle to torrent. Within minutes their path was submerged beneath a churning, muddy flow. "We were lucky," Miguel said, watching the water rise. 10 minutes later and we'd be swept away. As their eyes adjusted to the dim light, details of the cave emerged. More handprints decorated the walls, along with faded pictographs of animals and spiraling patterns. "This place has been used for centuries," Aila whispered. Running her fingers gently across the ancient art, Miguel explored deeper into the cave, his flashlight beam dancing across the stone walls. "Aila, come see this." In a small alcove at the back, a stone shelf held what appeared to be offerings, a bundle of dried herbs, a small clay pot, and a polished turquoise stone strung on a leather cord. "We shouldn't touch these," Miguel warned. "They're sacred." The rain intensified outside, thunder cracking directly overhead. As Aila turned to watch the storm, her foot caught on an uneven stone. She stumbled, crying out as her ankle twisted beneath her. "Are you okay?" Miguel rushed to her side. Aila winced, pain shooting up her leg. "I don't think it's broken, but it hurts." Miguel helped her to a smooth rock where she could sit, then carefully removed her boot to examine the injury. Her ankle was already swelling, Definitely sprained, he pronounced. You need to stay off it for at least a day. We don't have a day, Aila protested, but her voice lacked conviction. The pain was making her nauseated. Miguel used their first aid kit to wrap the ankle tightly. We can't go anywhere in this storm anyway. Outside, the flash flood had peaked, water roaring past their shelter with frightening power. They were effectively trapped until both the flood receded and Aila could walk. Night fell early under the storm clouds. They ate a cold dinner of granola bars and beef jerky, saving their cooking fuel for when it was truly needed. The temperature dropped further, and they huddled together for warmth. This is my fault, Aila said miserably. I dragged you into this crazy quest. You didn't drag me anywhere, Miguel replied. I came because you're my friend, and because it sounded like an adventure. Some adventure. We're stuck in a cave, I'm injured, and we've barely started. Miguel was silent for a moment. Maybe this is the test. What test? In all the old stories, there's always a test. To see if the seeker is worthy of finding what they're looking for. Despite her pain and frustration, Aila smiled. So we're in a legend now. We're following a mysterious diary to a forgotten place that might not even exist. Sounds like a legend to me. Thunder crashed again, closer this time. In the sudden flash of lightning that illuminated the cave entrance, the turquoise amulet seemed to glow with an inner light. Aila felt drawn to it. Do you think it would be disrespectful if I just looked at that amulet? Not take it, just look closer. Miguel hesitated. I don't know. My grandmother would say we should leave offerings, not take them. But Aila was already moving, hobbling carefully to the stone shelf. The turquoise caught the light from their flashlight, revealing intricate carvings on its surface, symbols that matched those in her mother's diary. Miguel, look, she pointed to the markings. These are the same symbols Mom drew. She must have seen this exact amulet. When Aila touched the stone, a strange warmth seemed to flow through her fingers, and in that moment she knew with absolute certainty that they were on the right path. We need to continue, she said firmly. As soon as the storm passes and I can walk. Miguel looked at her swollen ankle dubiously. And how exactly are you planning to do that? Morning arrived with merciful clarity. The storm had passed, leaving the desert washed clean, the air sharp with the scent of wet sage and stone. Outside, the cave. The flood had receded, leaving only a shallow stream and debris marking its violent passage. Aila tested her ankle. The swelling had improved somewhat, but pain still shot up her leg when she put weight on it. We should head back, Miguel said, watching her wince. Your grandfather will be looking for you soon anyway. We've barely started, Aila protested. Mum's diary says Shadow Canyon is still a full day's journey from here. You can barely walk. I'll use a stick, make a crutch. Miguel shook his head. This is crazy, Aila. What if you fall and break something worse? We're miles from help. Their argument was interrupted by a sound from outside, the rhythmic crunch of footsteps on wet sand. Both teenagers froze, exchanging alarmed glances. Miguel reached for a rock, holding it defensively. A shadow fell across the cave entrance. Mighty big storm for such small travelers, said a deep voice. The figure that stepped into view was tall and lean, his weathered face the color of the surrounding cliffs. Gray streaked his long black hair, tied back with a strip of leather. He carried a handmade walking staff of polished mesquite wood. "Who are you?" Miguel demanded, still clutching his rock. The man's eyes, dark as obsidian and just as sharp, moved from Miguel to Aila, then to the diary she clutched protectively. "The better question," he said quietly, "is who are you, and why do you carry Aila Redfeather's journal?" Aila's breath caught. "You knew my mother?" Something flickered across the man's face. Surprise, perhaps recognition. Elena's daughter. It wasn't a question. "You have her eyes." "How did you find us?" Miguel asked, suspicion evident in his voice. The stranger gestured vaguely toward the canyon. I live out here. Saw your tracks yesterday. Then the storm hit. Figured I'd check if anyone needed help. His gaze dropped to Aila's ankle. Seems I was right. I'm fine, Aila insisted. Just a sprain. A sprain that will become worse if you keep walking on it. The man considered her for a long moment. You're looking for Shadow Canyon? Aila nodded, surprised. Did my mother tell you about it? A strange smile touched the man's lips. In a manner of speaking, he extended his hand. Thomas Walker. Neither teenager moved to shake it. Thomas dropped his hand with a shrug. Smart. Don't trust strangers in the desert. He unslung a canteen from his shoulder, but strangers with water might be worth listening to. Their own supplies were running low. After a hesitant moment, Miguel accepted the offered canteen, sniffing the contents before taking a cautious sip. Just water, Thomas assured them. If I wanted to harm you, I wouldn't need trickery. Why would my mother's diary bring me to you? Aila asked. It didn't. It's bringing you to Shadow Canyon. Thomas settled on a rock at the cave entrance, carving. Knife appearing in his hand as he began whittling at his walking staff. I'm just someone who knows the way. You've been there? Aila leaned forward eagerly. Thomas's knife paused. I've been many places. Will you show us the way? Miguel shot her a warning look, which she ignored. Thomas continued his methodical whittling. Why do you want to find it? Because my mother wanted me to, Aila replied simply. Did she now? Thomas studied the wood shavings collecting at his feet. And how do you know that? Her diary says she planned to take me there someday. But she never did. The blunt statement hung in the air. Aila felt tears threatening and blinked them away fiercely. She got sick, she said. She ran out of time. Thomas nodded slowly. Time is the one thing we can never get back. His knife resumed its rhythmic scraping. Shadow Canyon isn't a tourist attraction, girl. It's a place of memory, of burden. What burden? Not my story to tell. Thomas stood abruptly. Your ankle needs rest. Your friend here should take you home. No! Aila struggled to her feet. Please, I've come this far. I need to see what was so important to her. Thomas assessed her, his expression unreadable. Finally, he extended the walking staff he'd been working on. The top had been carved into the shape of a bird in flight. If you're determined to go, you'll need this. Aila accepted the staff, surprised by its lightness and perfect height. The path ahead gets harder, Thomas warned. Not just the terrain. There are memories in these canyons, not all of them peaceful. Will you guide us? Aila asked. Thomas shook his head. To the water, yes. To Shadow Canyon, that journey is yours alone. Why won't you take us all the way? Because some paths we must walk ourselves. Thomas gathered his few belongings. Besides, there are those who might not welcome my return. Who? Miguel asked. The keepers of memory, Thomas replied cryptically. Those who chose to remember when others chose to forget. He gestured toward the canyon outside. Rest today. I'll return at dawn to lead you to the hidden spring. After that, you're on your own. With that, he slipped away, leaving the teenagers with more questions than answers. Thomas returned at first light, materializing from the canyon shadows like a figure from a dream. He carried a small deerskin bag and wore the same weathered clothes, though his hair was now braided with a single eagle feather. You're still here, he observed. I half expected you'd come to your senses overnight. Miguel, who had slept fitfully, eyed the man with undisguised suspicion. We don't have much choice now. Water's getting low. Thomas nodded. The spring is about 3 miles from here. If we leave now, we'll reach it by midday. He glanced at Aila's ankle. How is it? Aila tested her weight on the carved staff. Better. I can walk. Slowly, Thomas cautioned. These canyons punish haste. They set out with the rising sun warming the stone walls around them. Thomas led, moving with the easy confidence of one who knew every handhold and loose stone. Aila followed, leaning heavily on her staff, with Miguel bringing up the rear. "How did you know my mother?" Aila finally asked, breaking the silence that had stretched between them. Thomas continued walking for several paces before answering. "We grew up together, in the old village." "What village?" "The one you're seeking. Shadow Canyon held our people's homes for generations before it was abandoned." Aila nearly stumbled. "You lived there? In the hidden village?" Thomas nodded. "Until I was 17. Your mother was 15 when everyone left." "Why did they leave?" His jaw tightened. "Progress. That's what they called it. Progress and profit." "I don't understand." "You will, when you reach the canyon." Thomas paused, helping Aila navigate a particularly steep section. "Your mother was special. Even as a child, she saw things others missed, heard what the land was trying to tell us." What was it telling her? Thomas's eyes grew distant. That some treasures should remain buried, that not all wealth should be counted in dollars. They continued in silence until the canyon narrowed further, its walls rising hundreds of feet on either side, blocking the direct sunlight. The temperature dropped noticeably in the shadow. "Almost there," Thomas said softly. "Listen." Aila strained her ears, eventually catching the faint music of water, a gentle splashing that echoed against stone. Around a final bend, the canyon opened into a small grotto. Ferns and moss clung to the rocks, where a small spring emerged from the cliff face, collecting in a clear pool before continuing as a narrow stream. "The desert's eye," Thomas announced, "one of the few year-round water sources in these canyons." Miguel rushed forward, refilling their canteens while Aila sank gratefully onto a smooth boulder beside the pool. Thomas remained standing, his posture alert like a sentinel on duty. "You must reach Shadow Canyon before nightfall tomorrow," he said. "The path is marked by cairns, small stacks of stones, but they're easy to miss if you're not paying attention." "You really won't come with us?" Aila asked. Thomas shook his head. "My presence would complicate things." "How?" He reached into his shirt and withdrew something that caught the light. A small silver hair clip fashioned in the shape of a thunderbird. "Your mother gave me this once upon a time." He turned it in his fingers. "Before she left. Before she chose a different path." Understanding dawned on Aila. "You loved her." "Many did," Thomas replied simply. "She was easy to love, but she married my father instead. John Redfeather was a good man, a teacher from the big reservation school." Thomas's voice held no bitterness. "He offered her a way to carry our stories to a wider world. And you?" "I chose to stay near the old places to watch, to remember." He gestured around them. "Not everyone left Shadow Canyon willingly. Some remained, guarding what was almost lost." Miguel returned with the filled canteens. "Who remains? You said the village was abandoned." "The village, yes. But sacred places are never truly abandoned." Thomas pointed to Aila's diary. "Your mother's map will lead you the rest of the way. Follow it exactly. Will they welcome us?" Aila asked. "These guardians?" Thomas's expression softened. "They will recognize Elena's daughter. Whether that means welcome depends on why you've come. I came because of her diary, because she wanted me to find this place. And once you've found it, what then?" Aila hesitated, realizing she hadn't thought beyond discovery. I don't know." Thomas nodded as if her answer confirmed something. "Then you must listen carefully when you arrive. The canyon speaks to those willing to hear." He handed her a small bundle, wrapped in buckskin. "Dried meat and berries. Enough for 2 days. You're leaving now?" "My path goes elsewhere." Thomas touched the hair clip once more before returning it to his shirt. "Tell Nahimana that Thomas still keeps watch. She'll understand." "Nahimana?" "The elder, my aunt. She'll be expecting you, though she may not admit it." With that cryptic statement, Thomas turned to go, pausing only to add, "Follow the stream until it ends at the red cliff. From there look for the hawk carved in stone. The path leads up, then down into shadow. Before Aila could ask another question, he was gone, vanishing into the canyon's depths as suddenly as he had appeared. The spring's gentle music faded behind them, as Aila and Miguel followed the small stream deeper into the canyon system. Aila's walking staff tapped a steady rhythm against stone, her ankle throbbing but bearable. The water's path led them through increasingly narrow passages, where daylight penetrated only in thin, shifting beams. Thomas was strange, Miguel said, breaking their contemplative silence, like someone from an old story. He knew my mother, Aila replied, still processing the revelation. Maybe loved her, and now he lives alone in the desert. That's some serious heartbreak. I don't think it was just about my mother. Aila paused to rest, leaning on her staff. It sounded like something happened to the village, something that scattered everyone. Miguel filled his hands with stream water, drinking deeply. Companies have been trying to mine these canyons for decades. My father says there's uranium, copper, maybe even gold. The stream gradually narrowed until it disappeared into a rock crevice barely wider than Aila's hand. Above loomed a sheer red cliff face, just as Thomas had described. Look for the hawk carved in stone, Aila murmured. Scanning the towering wall, Miguel spotted it first, a petroglyph etched high above their heads. Its wings spread in eternal flight. Up there, he pointed. But how do we get up? Aila consulted the diary. Mom's map shows a hidden path that starts behind that large boulder. They circled the massive rock to discover a narrow trail, zigzagging up the cliff face, almost invisible. Unless you knew exactly where to look. At its base hung a small bundle of eagle feathers tied with sinew and adorned with beads, swaying gently in the breeze. Prayer ties, Aila whispered, recognizing them from her grandfather's teachings. Offerings for safe passage. The climb was treacherous, a natural staircase of protruding stone and narrow ledges that demanded complete concentration. Halfway up, Aila's injured ankle buckled, nearly sending her tumbling backward. Miguel caught her arm, steadying her against the cliff. "I've got you," he assured her, face tense with effort. They continued more cautiously, testing each handhold before trusting their weight to it. The sun beat down mercilessly on the exposed rock face, their water supply diminishing with each desperate swallow. Near the top, the path narrowed to a mere shelf of stone, barely wide enough for their feet. Aila pressed herself against the cliff, heart hammering as loose pebbles skittered over the edge, falling silently for long seconds before she heard their distant impact. "Don't look down," Miguel warned unnecessarily. After what seemed like hours, they reached a small plateau where the hawk petroglyph spread its wings across the stone. Beyond, a dark crevice split the cliff, a narrow passage leading through the ridge. "This must be it," Aila said, checking the diary's map. "Mom called this the Needle's Eye." The passage was so narrow they had to turn sideways to squeeze through, backpacks scraping against ancient stone. Darkness enveloped them, cool air raising goosebumps on their sun-heated skin. Aila's staff snagged on something, nearly tripping her. When Miguel shone his flashlight, they saw countless small carvings covering the passage walls, symbols, animals, and human figures telling stories neither teenager could read. "This place is old," Miguel whispered, voice hushed with reverence. "Really old." The passage twisted and turned until they lost all sense of direction, guided only by the thin beam of Miguel's flashlight. Then, without warning, it widened, and daylight appeared ahead. They emerged onto a small ledge overlooking a vast, hidden valley cradled between towering mesas. Evening light bathed everything in gold, revealing what at first glance appeared to be natural rock formations scattered across the valley floor. But as their eyes adjusted, patterns emerged, straight lines, deliberate arrangements, the unmistakable remnants of human habitation. "Shadow Canyon," Aila breathed. Below them stretched the hidden village, adobe walls partially reclaimed by the desert. Givas sunk into the earth, a central plaza now grown over with sage and juniper. Centuries of wind and rain had softened the structure's edges, but the village's bones remained, a skeletal memory of what once was. "We found it," Miguel said, awe evident in his voice. "Your mom's secret place." Aila opened the diary to a sketch that matched the valley perfectly, the same arrangement of buildings, the same distant mesas. In the margin, her mother had written, "Home of shadows, keeper of memories." "We need to get down there before dark," Aila said, scanning for a path. Thomas said the guardians are still here somewhere, as if summoned by her words. A thin wisp of smoke rose from what appeared to be an intact structure at the village's edge, almost invisible against the darkening sky. "Someone's down there," Miguel whispered. "Watching us." The diary's next page showed the descent path, another precarious trail winding down the cliff face. But Aila hesitated, suddenly afraid. What waited for them below? What secret had been so important that her mother had mapped the journey, but never spoken of it? The sun dipped lower, shadows lengthening across the valley. "Decision time, let's go," Aila said firmly. "We didn't come all this way to turn back now." The descent into Shadow Canyon proved more treacherous than the climb. Dusk painted the cliffs in deepening purple, stealing definition from the narrow trail that switched back down the steep face. Loose stones skittered away beneath their feet, tumbling into the growing darkness below. "We should have waited until morning," Miguel muttered, pressing himself against the rock wall as a gust of wind threatened his balance. Aila said nothing, focused entirely on placing her staff securely before each step. Her ankle throbbed with renewed intensity, but determination pushed her forward. The diary had become a talisman clutched against her chest, her mother's presence almost palpable in this sacred space. Halfway down, Miguel froze. "Did you hear that?" Aila listened. Beyond the wind's soft moan through juniper branches came another sound, a clear, melodic whistle, distinctly human. "Someone signaling," she whispered. The whistle came again, answered by another from somewhere across the canyon. Then silence. "They know we're here," Miguel said uneasily. They continued downward with heightened caution. As they neared the canyon floor, Aila spotted movement among the ruins, a shadow detaching from deeper shadows, briefly visible before vanishing behind a crumbling wall. "I saw someone," she hissed. Miguel nodded grimly. "Me too. Different direction." The final stretch of path leveled out onto the sandy valley floor. Ancient walls rose around them, ghostly in the fading light. The village was larger than it had appeared from above. Dozens of structures arranged in a pattern that seemed random at first glance, but revealed subtle intentionality upon closer inspection. "Where to now?" Miguel asked, voice barely above a whisper. Aila opened the diary to the map of the village. Her mother had marked a circular structure near the center with a star. "This way," she said, pointing toward what appeared to be a large kiva, a ceremonial chamber partially sunken into the earth. They picked their way through the ruins, hyper-aware of watching eyes. Twice more, they glimpsed movement at the corner of their vision, figures observing from doorways or rooftops, vanishing when directly approached. Near a collapsed wall, something glinted in the last rays of sunlight. Miguel stooped to retrieve a small, polished obsidian shard, its surface reflecting their faces in perfect miniature despite centuries of exposure. "A mirror," he said, turning it in his fingers. "Old but perfect. Put it back," Aila urged. "It belongs here." As Miguel returned the shard to its resting place, a flicker of light caught their attention. A brief flash from a distant cliff, followed by another closer by. "They're using mirrors to talk," Aila realized. "Signaling about us." The kiva loomed ahead, a circular depression 20 feet across, its roof long collapsed though the thick stone walls remained intact. Stone steps descended into darkness. "We need light," Miguel said, reaching for his flashlight. "Wait," Aila placed her hand on his arm. "If they're watching, a bright light will seem aggressive. Let's make camp just outside instead." "Show we mean no harm." They gathered dried juniper branches for a small fire, deliberately building it in the open where they could be easily observed. The kindling caught quickly, flames pushing back the encroaching night. "Now what?" Miguel asked, huddling close to the fire's warmth as desert chill settled into the canyon. "We wait," Aila replied. "Thomas said they'd be expecting us." As full darkness claimed the canyon, stars emerged with startling brilliance above them. The fire cast flickering shadows across ancient walls, creating illusions of movement everywhere they looked. "We should sleep in shifts," Miguel suggested. "I'll take first watch." Aila nodded, suddenly aware of her exhaustion. Using her backpack as a pillow, she stretched out beside the fire, her mother's diary tucked securely against her chest. Sleep came fitfully, filled with strange dreams. Her mother walked ahead through the ruins, stopping occasionally to look back with a sad smile. "Listen," she seemed to say, though no sound came from her lips. "Remember," Aila jolted awake to Miguel's urgent whisper, "someone's coming." The fire had burned low, its embers casting just enough light to reveal a lone figure approaching from the darkness. Tall and straight-backed despite apparent age, the silhouette moved with deliberate grace across the uneven ground. Aila scrambled to her feet, heart pounding. This was no furtive watcher, but someone approaching openly, with purpose. As the figure neared their fire, features materialized from shadow. An elderly woman with silver hair braided in traditional Apache style, face etched with deep lines of wisdom and weathering. She wore modern clothes, jeans and a flannel shirt, but carried herself with unmistakable dignity, her dark eyes fixed first on Miguel, assessing, then shifted to Aila with piercing intensity. Recognition flickered across her weathered features. "Elena's daughter," she said, voice strong despite her years. "You have your mother's eyes." Aila stepped forward on trembling legs. "Are you Nahimana?" The woman's eyebrows lifted slightly. "Thomas spoke of me? He said you'd be expecting us. Did he?" The old woman's expression remained unreadable. "Thomas says many things, not all of them wise." She studied Aila for another long moment, then gestured toward the darkness behind her. "Come, this is no place for children to sleep. There are better accommodations for Elena's daughter, even if she arrives unannounced and uninvited." Nahimana led them through the village ruins, her sure steps finding paths invisible in the darkness. They followed a meandering route between crumbling walls and collapsed roofs, moving steadily toward the canyon's western edge. "Watch your step," she cautioned, her voice carrying naturally in the night air. The old ones built with purpose, but time respects no builder. After 15 minutes of silent walking, the ancient ruins gave way to something unexpected. Newer structures nestled against the canyon wall, their adobe walls intact, windows glowing with soft lamplight. A small hidden community of perhaps a dozen buildings arranged in a protective semicircle. "People still live here," Aila whispered in amazement. "Some of us never left," Nahimana replied. Others returned when they realized what was lost. She led them to a modest dwelling at the compound's edge. Inside, a kerosene lamp illuminated a single room furnished with simple, handcrafted items, a wooden table, chairs with woven reed seats, colorful blankets on a narrow bed, and shelves lined with handmade pottery. "Sit," Nahimana instructed. Gesturing to the chairs, she moved to a corner shelf where an intricately designed clay bowl rested. Taking it to a modern water dispenser, one of the few contemporary items visible, she filled the vessel and offered it first to Aila. "Drink." The journey through the needle's eye leaves even the young parched. The bowl's exterior featured an ancient thunderbird design, its lines worn smooth by generations of hands. Aila drank deeply, then passed it to Miguel. "This bowl belonged to your great-grandmother," Nahimana said, watching Aila closely. "4 generations have drunk from it." "My mother never told me about this place," Aila said, gesturing toward the window and the hidden community beyond. "Or about you." Nahimana reclaimed the bowl, placing it carefully back on its shelf. "Elena made her choice. To protect you, she believed silence was necessary. Protect me from what? From burden, from obligation." The elder woman eased herself onto a chair. "Why have you come, Aila Redfeather? What do you seek in Shadow Canyon?" "I found my mother's diary after she died. It led me here. The diary alone would not bring you across such dangerous terrain." "What drives you, child?" Aila hesitated. "I want to understand who she was." There was so much she never told me. Nahimana's weathered face softened slightly. Your mother carried many secrets. Not all were hers to share. A soft knock interrupted them. The door opened to reveal a middle-aged man with intense eyes and hair streaked with premature silver. Elder, he acknowledged Nahimana with a respectful nod before his gaze fixed suspiciously on the teenagers. These are the intruders. Guests, Nahimana corrected firmly. This is Aila Redfeather's daughter and her companion. The man's expression changed subtly. Elena's child? He studied Aila with new interest. She has returned then, as the old stories said. She has come to learn, Kemi, Nahimana replied. Whether this is the return from prophecy remains to be seen, Kemi frowned. The council should be informed immediately. The council can wait until morning, Nahimana said with quiet authority. These young ones need rest. With obvious reluctance, Kemi withdrew, leaving the door slightly ajar. Through it, Aila glimpsed other curious faces quickly retreating from view. You must forgive our caution, Nahimana said. Visitors are rare and rarely welcome. Miguel, who had remained silent until now, leaned forward. How many people live here? 23 at present. Once we numbered hundreds. The old woman's eyes grew distant. Before the sickness. Before the betrayal, what sickness? Aila asked. Nahimana rose stiffly. Questions for morning light. For now you will sleep here. I have a dwelling nearby. She moved toward the door but paused when Aila spoke again. Thomas said to tell you he still keeps watch. Nahimana's hand tightened on the doorframe. Thomas walks between worlds, belonging fully to neither. Her voice carried an emotion Aila couldn't quite name. He should have returned long ago. After she left, Miguel helped Aila arrange blankets on the packed earth floor beside the bed. This is getting weird, he whispered. Prophecy? Betrayal? What have we walked into? I don't know, Aila admitted. But these people knew my mother. Maybe even better than I did. Sleep proved elusive. Through the small window, Aila watched stars wheel above the canyon rim. She thought of her grandfather, who must surely be frantic by now, and of Thomas walking the desert alone, and of her mother keeping secrets to protect her. From what? Dawn came, with pale fingers of light reaching into the canyon. Aila rose and stepped outside to find the hidden community already active. People tending small gardens, carrying water, preparing food. Several paused their work to watch her with undisguised curiosity. Children half hidden behind adults pointed and whispered. An elderly man making his way across the compound stopped abruptly when he saw her, his weathered face registering shock. The daughter returns, he announced loudly, as was foretold. Others gathered, forming a loose circle around Aila. Their expressions ranged from wonder to wariness, hope to suspicion. Nahimana emerged from a nearby dwelling. Enough gawking, she called. Let the girl breathe. She approached Aila, her lined face solemn in daylight. The council gathers at midday. There is much to explain before then. She gestured toward the ancient village ruins, now clearly visible in morning light. Come, I will show you what your mother wanted you to find. The morning sun transformed Shadow Canyon. What had seemed ghostly and twilight now revealed intricate beauty, adobe walls the color of sunset, perfectly aligned with seasonal solar paths, elaborate irrigation channels long dry but engineered with remarkable precision. Nahimana walked slowly, her gait unhurried yet purposeful. Miguel had stayed behind to rest his blistered feet, leaving Aila alone with the elder as they moved through the ancient village. Our people lived here for over 500 years, Nahimana explained, her voice carrying the weight of oral tradition. Before the Spanish, before the borders, when the land spoke, we listened. They approached a large circular stone, set flat into the earth. Its surface was covered with concentric rings, lines, and small carved cups, positioned with mathematical precision. The calendar stone, Nahimana said, it marks the sun's journey, solstices, equinoxes, planting times, ceremony days. Even now, it loses not a single day over decades. Aila crouched to examine the markings. My mother drew this in her diary. Elena studied the old ways intensely. She understood what many had forgotten. Nahimana's fingers traced a specific line on the stone. Today, the sun will touch this mark at midday. The autumn balance point. Why did everyone leave this place? Aila asked, rising to her feet. Nahimana's expression darkened. Follow me. They continued through the ruins until they reached what appeared to be the village center, a large, open plaza surrounding another circular structure, more elaborate than the kiva they had seen the previous night. The council chamber, Nahimana explained, where decisions affecting all were made together. She led Aila inside, where stone benches lined the walls in concentric circles descending toward a central fire pit. Sunlight streamed through precisely positioned openings in the intact roof, illuminating particular seats. Your grandfather sat there. Nahimana pointed to a bench marked with a thunderbird symbol matching the water bowl. As chief before the troubles came. My grandfather was chief here? Aidla's voice echoed in the chamber. Aila Redfeather led our people for 12 years, until the mining company found what lay beneath our feet. Gold. Aila guessed. Uranium. Nahimana spat the word like poison. The white man's magic stone. They came with papers, then with promises, then with threats. When those failed, they brought sickness to our water. She gestured toward the mountain walls surrounding them. Our canyon sits atop one of the richest uranium deposits in the southwest, worth millions to those who care nothing for the land. They poisoned you? Never proven, but children sickened. Elders died. Animals were born twisted. Nahimana's face hardened with old anger. Your grandfather led those who chose to leave. Better to abandon our ancestral home, he argued, than to watch our children die. And you stayed. Some of us remained as guardians, to protect the true treasure of Shadow Canyon. What treasure? Nahimana studied Aila's face carefully. That is for the council to reveal, if they judge you ready. They exited the council chamber into bright sunlight. In the distance, Aila could see people gathering near the inhabited section of the canyon. Your mother returned many times, Nahimana continued. She understood the importance of remembering, of keeping faith with the past, but she raised me knowing nothing of this place, to protect you. Nahimana stopped walking, turning to face Aila directly. The mining company never stopped wanting what lies beneath us. Their papers claim legal right to everything here. Those who remember the old ways are inconvenient. Understanding dawned on Aila. She kept it secret to keep me safe, and to give you choice. Nahimana's weathered hand touched Aila's shoulder gently. Knowledge brings obligation. Your grandfather understood this. So did your mother. They had nearly reached the inhabited compound when a young man approached rapidly, his expression urgent. It was Keme, the man from the previous night, Elder he called. The scouts report vehicles approaching the western access. At least 3 trucks. Nahimana straightened, suddenly alert. Government markings? No corporate Atlas Mining. The name sent a visible shock through the old woman. Impossible. They cannot have found the access road so quickly unless... She stopped abruptly, eyes darting to Aila. Unless what? Aila asked, alarm growing. Unless they followed you. Kim's accusation was blunt. Did anyone know where you were going? No. Just my friend Miguel, and he's here with me. Nahimana's expression grew grave. Thomas knew. Thomas wouldn't betray us, Aila protested. Thomas walks his own path. Nahimana turned to Keme. How long? 2 hours, maybe less. Gather the council immediately, and bring the other outsider, Miguel. She fixed Aila with an intense gaze. It seems your mother's burden has found you sooner than expected, child. As they hurried back toward the compound, the canyon's peaceful atmosphere had vanished. People moved with urgency, gathering belongings. Children were ushered into dwellings, and several men with binoculars climbed to higher vantage points. What's happening? Aila asked, struggling to keep pace with Nahimana despite her injured ankle. History repeats, the elder woman replied grimly. The miners have returned to Shadow Canyon. And now you must decide where you stand, daughter of Eleanor, with those who remember, or those who would make us forget. The council chamber, not the ancient one in the ruins, but a modern adaptation in the living compound, buzzed with urgent voices. 7 elders sat in a semicircle, their faces etched with concern. Nahimana took her place at the center, while Aila and Miguel stood uncomfortably before them. Keme entered last, carrying a slender rod of polished wood adorned with eagle feathers, turquoise, and intricate carvings. He placed it reverently before Nahimana. The talking stick emerges only in times of greatest need. Nahimana explained to Aila, it has witnessed every major decision of our people for 12 generations. The stick's presence silenced the room. Nahimana lifted it with ceremonial deliberation. Atlas Mining approaches our sanctuary, she began, her voice stronger than her years suggested. After 20 years of peace they return, on the very day Aila Redfeather's daughter finds her way to us. All eyes turn to Aila. I didn't lead them here, she protested. I didn't even tell my grandfather where I was going. An elderly man with a deeply lined face spoke harshly. The company has searched for years. They find us now when outsiders breach our secrecy. This cannot be coincidence. Jacob speaks truth, added a woman with silver braids. The timing suggests betrayal. Miguel stepped forward. We came alone, following Aila's mother's diary. No one followed us. Thomas knew, Kem reminded them. Thomas, who walks with miners sometimes. Thomas would never betray us, Nahimana said firmly. He has kept our secrets for decades. Then how? Jacob demanded. How did they find the western access? It's not on any map. A younger council member, perhaps in his 40s, cleared his throat. Satellite technology improves yearly. Perhaps they simply found us from above. Regardless of how, Nahimana said, they come. We must decide our response. She passed the talking stick to Jacob, who grasped it with gnarled fingers. We should gather what we can and use the eastern exit, he said grimly. Disappear as we have before. He passed the stick to the silver-braided woman. Running solves nothing, Jacob. They will follow. She turned to Aila. You are Haman's granddaughter, Elena's daughter. The bloodline of chiefs flows in your veins. What do you know of your heritage, child? Aila shook her head helplessly. Almost nothing. My mother never spoke of this place. My grandfather mentions our traditions sometimes, but never Shadow Canyon. The woman's expression softened with sadness. So much lost, so much forgotten. She passed the talking stick. Each elder spoke in turn, some advocating flight, others resistance. The talking stick eventually returned to Nahimana. The prophecy speaks of the chief's granddaughter returning when the threat resurfaces, she reminded them. That time appears to be now. What prophecy? Aila asked. Before your grandfather left, our oldest seer had a vision. Nahimana's eyes grew distant with memory. She saw darkness covering the canyon, but also the chief's line returning to restore balance. I'm just a 13-year-old girl, Aila protested. I can't restore anything. Perhaps, Nahimana acknowledged. Yet here you stand, on the day of autumn balance, as miners approach once more. A scout burst into the chamber. They've stopped at the ridge road 1 mile out. Setting up equipment. Surveying gear? Asked the younger councilman. And drilling equipment. Small rig. The news rippled through the elders like a physical blow. They mean to take core samples, Jacob said bitterly. The first violation. Nahimana rose, decision apparently made. We have little time. Aila must be shown the truth before they arrive. She fixed the teenager with an intense gaze. Are you strong enough to carry what your mother protected? Before Aila could respond, the scout spoke again. There's something else. A man is with them. Thomas Walker. The chamber erupted in outrage. Traitor! He has sold us out! After all these years. Nahimana raised the talking stick, restoring order. We do not know his purpose. Thomas has walked between worlds for decades, keeping our secrets. Or selling them, Jacob muttered. Keme stepped forward. I will watch the mining party. Learn their intentions. Take Daniel with you, Nahimana instructed. Report any movement toward the canyon floor. As Keme departed, Nahimana turned back to Aila and Miguel. You two must make a choice. When the miners arrive, they will see you as tourists who stumbled upon ruins, nothing more. You could simply leave with them, return to your normal lives. Or, Aila asked, or you stand with us. But know this, Once you learn what Shadow Canyon truly protects, there is no unknowing. You will carry the burden your mother carried. Miguel looked at Aila. This is your journey, your family. I'll support whatever you decide. The council watched in silence, the fate of their secret apparently resting on a teenage girl's shoulders. Aila thought of her mother's diary, of Thomas's cryptic warnings, of her grandfather who had once led these people. "Show me," she said finally. "Show me what my mother protected." Nahimana nodded solemnly. "Come then, while there is still time." She led them from the chamber, through the compound, and toward a small, unassuming structure set against the canyon wall. Unlike the other buildings, this one bore no windows, only a heavy wooden door secured with both a modern padlock and traditional woven bindings. Nahimana removed a key from around her neck, unlocking the padlock, then carefully unwound the ceremonial bindings. "What your mother wanted you to find lies within," she said, her voice dropping to near whisper. "The true treasure of Shadow Canyon, the reason we remain, the burden of memory." The door swung open to darkness beyond. "Once you cross this threshold," Nahimana warned, "your life changes forever." "Are you certain, Aila Redfeather?" Heart-pounding, Aila nodded. "Then enter, daughter of Elena, and learn what the mining company must never discover." Inside the windowless building, Nahimana lit an oil lamp. Its gentle light revealed a small, cave-like room. The walls were lined with wooden shelves holding pottery, woven baskets, and bundles of preserved documents. A large table occupied the center, covered with maps and papers, beneath a protective sheet of clear plastic. But it was the far wall that commanded attention. There, set into a specially constructed niche, rested a stone tablet approximately 2 feet square, its surface covered with symbols more ancient than any Aila had seen in the village. "The first teaching," Nahimana said reverently, "given to our ancestors when they arrived in this canyon nearly 1,000 years ago." Aila approached slowly, drawn by the tablet's presence. The symbols seemed to shift in the lamplight, creating an illusion of movement. "Can you read it?" she asked. "Not directly. The original language is lost, but its meaning has been passed through generations." Nahimana carefully removed the plastic covering from the table. "These maps show what lies beneath our feet." She unrolled a modern geological survey, revealing colorful layers representing underground formations. One layer, highlighted in bright yellow, formed a massive deposit directly beneath. "Shadow Canyon, the uranium," Aila guessed. "Yes, enough to make Atlas. Mining billions." Nahimana pointed to another layer, marked in red. "But beneath the uranium lies something far more precious, something the mining operation would destroy forever." The red layer appeared to be an underground river, or aquifer, flowing deep beneath the canyon. "Water?" Miguel asked, sounding unimpressed. "Not just any water," Nahimana corrected. "The ancients called it the lifeblood of the world. Modern science would call it an aquifer, but it's unlike any other." She unrolled another map showing how the underground water system connected to springs across hundreds of miles. This water feeds over 200 springs throughout the sacred mountains. It nurtures plant life found nowhere else. It contains minerals with healing properties science cannot explain. Nahimana's voice took on a rhythmic quality, like reciting sacred text. "And it remains pure, untouched by the contamination that plagues other water sources. That's why the mining operation is so dangerous," Aila realized. "Digging through the uranium would poison the aquifer." "Precisely. Mining the uranium would release radiation into the lifeblood. The contamination would spread through the entire system, emerging in springs miles away." Miguel studied the maps with growing comprehension. "An environmental disaster." "More than that," Nahimana said gravely. "A spiritual one. The first teaching speaks of our covenant with this land, to protect the lifeblood that sustains all living things." She gestured to the stone tablet. "Our purpose has always been guardianship." Aila thought of her mother's diary entries about burden and those who remember. "This is what my mother protected. This knowledge and more." Nahimana retrieved a thick folder from a shelf. Elena documented everything: the aquifer's properties, its connection to rare plant species, the potential contamination pathways, scientific evidence to fight the mining claims. She spread out Elena's meticulous notes and photographs. Your mother walked two worlds, ours and the scientific community. She gathered proof that could stop Atlas mining legally. Then why didn't she use it? Miguel asked. The company has powerful allies. When Elena presented preliminary findings, she was threatened. Your father too. Nahimana looked at Aila compassionately. They made it clear that pursuing the matter would endanger their family. You. The revelation struck Aila like physical pain. So she stopped? She changed tactics, kept gathering evidence quietly. Planned to release everything through trusted journalists when you were older. Nahimana's voice softened. Her illness came too suddenly. She couldn't complete her work. Aila touched her mother's handwritten notes, tracing the familiar script. And she left the diary for me to find. She believed you would continue what she began, that one day you would return to Shadow Canyon and understand your inheritance. Miguel, still examining the maps, looked up suddenly. These geological surveys are 20 years old. The mining company must have newer data. Of course, Nahimana agreed. Why do you think they've returned now? Their technology has advanced. They've located the richest uranium deposits with satellite imaging. And they don't care about the water, Aila said quietly. They don't even believe our claims about its special properties. To them, it's just another aquifer to work around or destroy if necessary. A commotion outside interrupted them. Moments later, Keme burst through the door, breathless. They're coming down. 4-wheel drives on the old access trail. 20 minutes at most. Nahimana quickly began gathering the most critical documents. Take these to the eastern cache, she instructed Keme. The original research cannot fall into their hands. As Keme left with an armful of materials, Nahimana turned to Aila. Now you understand what's at stake. The choice before you is the same one your mother faced, the same one your grandfather made. What choice? Aila asked, though she already sensed the answer. To remember or to forget, to carry the burden of knowledge or to walk away. Nahimana's eyes were intense. The mining company will see 2 teenagers who stumbled upon ruins. Nothing more. You could leave with them, return to your normal life, and if we stay, you join our fight. A fight your mother believed in enough to map the way back for you. Nahimana glanced toward the door. But decide quickly. The past and future collide in minutes. Aila looked at the stone tablet, at her mother's research, at the maps showing the precious water flowing beneath their feet. Something stirred within her: recognition, responsibility, resolve. I'll stay, she said firmly. I need to understand what this means. What my mother wanted me to do. Miguel nodded his agreement. I'm not leaving you here alone. Nahimana smiled for the first time since they'd met, a smile that transformed her stern face. Then come. We must greet our unwelcome visitors as simple caretakers of ancient ruins. Nothing more. She extinguished the lamp, leaving the stone tablet in darkness once more. The burden of memory has found its new carrier, she murmured as they stepped outside. Just as the prophecy foretold. The rumble of engines echoed through Shadow Canyon, shattering its ancient silence. 3 white SUVs bearing the Atlas Mining logo crawled over the rough terrain toward the village center. Dust billowed behind them, settling on ruins that had stood undisturbed for centuries. Nahimana had gathered her people, all 23 remaining residents, in the modern compound, away from the sacred sites. They stood watching, faces impassive, despite the tension evident in rigid shoulders and clenched jaws. Remember, Nahimana murmured to Aila and Miguel, you are simply lost hikers who stumbled upon ruins. We are caretakers preserving a historical site. Nothing more. The vehicles stopped at the edge of the ancient plaza. Men in khakis and button-down shirts emblazoned with corporate logos emerged, stretching after the rough journey. One carried a sophisticated electronic device, a handheld scanner with a digital display and extendable probe. That's new technology, Miguel whispered. Ground-penetrating radar, maybe. Last to exit was a tall man in expensive hiking gear, clearly the leader. Behind him, climbing slowly from the back seat, came Thomas. Seeing him, Keme made a small sound of disgust. Traitor walks with our enemies. But Aila noticed something in Thomas's posture, a certain stiffness, a reluctance. He wouldn't meet anyone's eyes, particularly Nahimana's. The leader approached, offering a practiced smile. "Miss Nahimana, good to see you again after all these years." He extended his hand, which Nahimana ignored. "Director Mercer," she acknowledged coldly. "You were not invited to Shadow Canyon." Now. Mercer withdrew his hand smoothly. "This is federal land with a valid exploration permit. We don't need an invitation. This is sacred ancestral territory, protected under the American Indian Religious Freedom Act," Nahimana countered. "Your previous permits were revoked." Mercer's smile tightened. "Our legal department has new interpretations of those restrictions. But I didn't come to argue law." He gestured to the ruins. "I came to discuss preservation of these remarkable artifacts during our upcoming survey work." "Survey work?" Nahimana's voice remained even, betraying nothing, just preliminary assessment, non-invasive. He nodded toward the man with the scanner. "Dr. Allen here uses ground imaging technology to map geological structures. No digging, no disruption." Dr. Allen held up the device. "This scanner creates a three-dimensional model of subsurface features down to 200 meters. Completely harmless to archaeological remains." Aila studied the scanner with growing alarm. If it could see that deep, it would reveal both the uranium deposit and the aquifer beneath. "The ruins have stood for centuries without your electronic interference," Nahimana said. "They will remain undisturbed." Mercer's affable demeanor hardened slightly. "I'm trying to be considerate here, Ms. Nahimana. Our permit allows us full access. I could simply proceed without consulting you at all." Thomas finally spoke, his voice strained. "The company has rights to the minerals, Nahimana, but they're willing to protect the surface structures. Are they willing to protect what flows beneath?" She replied cryptically. Something flickered in Thomas's eyes. A warning, perhaps. Mercer noticed the exchange. "I see you have visitors," he said, gaze shifting to Aila and Miguel. "Rather young for archaeological researchers." Before Nahimana could respond, Aila stepped forward. "We got lost hiking. These people helped us." Miguel nodded vigorously. "We were following some old trails and got turned around. Lucky we found this place." "Lucky indeed." Mercer studied them with new interest. "You look familiar, young lady." Aila's heart raced. Did he somehow recognize her resemblance to her mother? "I have one of those faces," she replied with a shrug. Mercer's attention returned to the ruins. "We'll set up a base camp near the eastern wall, away from the main structures. Dr. Allen will begin scanning tomorrow morning." His tone made it clear this wasn't a request. "And if we refuse?" Nahimana asked. "Then I make a call and federal marshals arrive to enforce our permit." Mercer spread his hands apologetically. "I'd prefer cooperation." While they spoke, one of the Atlas employees had wandered toward the concealed entrance to the document room. Kem smoothly intercepted him, steering him back toward the group. "Private dwelling," he said firmly. "Not part of the ruins." The man looked ready to argue until Mercer called him back. "Respect the residents' privacy, Johnson. We're guests here." But his eyes lingered on the building with interest. Thomas moved closer to Nahimana, speaking softly. "You should know they have satellite imaging already. They've identified the main deposit locations. Did they identify anything else?" she asked, equally quiet. Thomas shook his head minutely. Nahimana addressed Mercer again. "You may establish your camp beyond the ancient boundary wall, but the sacred sites remain off-limits without proper tribal escort." "Fair enough," Mercer agreed too readily. "We'll begin tomorrow at dawn." As the Atlas team returned to their vehicles to retrieve equipment, Nahimana drew her people into a tight circle. "They must not scan near the aquifer channels," she whispered urgently. "Distract them. Guide them to areas away from the sacred springs." "What about Thomas?" Kem asked bitterly. "He has brought destruction to our door." Nahimana's gaze found Thomas, who stood apart from both groups, a man divided. "Thomas makes his own path, but I do not believe he came willingly." She turned to Aila and Miguel. "You two present a problem. Mercer is suspicious. He may recognize your connection to Elena. Should we leave? Miguel asked. No. Nahimana's decision was immediate. Now more than ever, we need Elena's daughter here. She squeezed Aila's hand. Tonight, after they sleep, we will move the sacred documents to the hidden cave. Your mother knew it well. As the group dispersed, Thomas approached Aila cautiously. You shouldn't be here, he murmured. It's not safe. Did you lead them here? She demanded. Pain crossed his weathered face. They found me. Knew I'd been to Shadow Canyon before. Made certain. Arrangements to ensure my cooperation. You betrayed these people. My mother's people. Thomas looked at her with tired eyes. Your mother would understand sometimes. We make impossible choices. He glanced toward Mercer, who was watching them with interest. Be careful, Aila. That man knew your mother, and he has not forgotten her interference. Dawn arrived with a flurry of activity. Atlas mining personnel unpacked equipment, while Shadow Canyon's residents watched warily from a distance. Dr. Allen calibrated his scanner, its digital display flickering with colorful subsurface imagery. Aila had barely slept. After midnight, she'd helped Nahimana and Keme transfer key documents to a hidden cave, accessible only through a narrow crevice in the canyon wall. Now she sat with Miguel on a crumbling wall, observing the mining team's preparations. They're going to find the aquifer, Miguel murmured. That scanner can definitely detect water. Then we need to keep them away from the critical areas, Aila replied. Buy time until we figure out a better plan. Mercer emerged from the largest SUV, consulting a tablet computer. He traced a route on its screen, then called to his team. We'll start with the northeastern quadrant. Alan, bring the primary scanner. Nahimana approached Aila, her expression grave. They begin near the main aquifer channel. We must intervene. Before she could elaborate, Thomas appeared, looking haggard after a night in the mining company's camp. Nahimana, he said quietly. I need to speak with Elena's daughter alone. The elder woman hesitated, then nodded. 5 minutes. No more. Thomas led Aila to a secluded spot behind a partially collapsed wall. From his pocket he withdrew a small object wrapped in leather. Your mother gave me this years ago, he explained, unwrapping a modern thumb drive encased in a protective shell. For safekeeping. She said if anything happened to her, I should ensure it reached you when the time was right. Aila took the device, surprised by its ordinary appearance amid so much ancient history. What's on it? Everything. Scientific analysis of the aquifer's unique mineral composition, legal documentation of the tribe's water rights, proof of Atlas Mining's previous environmental violations. Thomas glanced nervously toward Mercer's team. Evidence that could stop them permanently in court, if not here. Why didn't my mother use this herself? Pain crossed Thomas's weathered face. She tried. Filed injunctions, petitioned government agencies. Then the threats began. Not just against her, but against you and your father. Anonymous at first, then more direct. From Atlas. Never proven. But the message was clear. Drop the fight or face consequences. Thomas's voice dropped lower. Your mother's accident, the one that started her illness. It came 1 week after she submitted critical evidence to the EPA. Cold understanding washed over Aila. You think they caused it? The accident? Thomas's silence was answer enough. What am I supposed to do with this? Aila held up the memory stick. Get it out of here. To someone who can use it. Environmental lawyers, journalists, tribal authorities. Thomas gripped her shoulder. But not while Mercer watches. He remembers your mother all too well. A shout interrupted. Them. Dr. Allen was setting up his scanner near a natural spring, one of the outlets for the underground. Aquifer Nahimana moved quickly to intercept him. That area is sacred ground. No electronic devices permitted. Allen looked to Mercer, who approached with practiced diplomacy. Ms. Nahimana, we've been very accommodating about your spiritual concerns, but our permit allows comprehensive surveying. Your permit does not override religious protection laws, she countered. Aila slipped the memory stick into her pocket and joined the confrontation. Miguel close behind. Actually, she said, improvising, I read about this in school. The American Indian Religious Freedom Act specifically protects sacred sites from disturbance. including electronic surveying that might interfere with spiritual energies. Mercer's eyes narrowed, studying Aila more closely. "And you're an expert on Native American law, miss?" "Just something I learned in history class," Aila replied, avoiding the implied question about her name. "Regardless," Mercer continued smoothly, "our legal team has determined that scientific surveying constitutes no spiritual disturbance." Keme had joined them, along with several other residents. The confrontation was drawing everyone to the spring. "Perhaps," Nahimana suggested with forced calm, "we could discuss alternative survey locations, areas less sensitive to our traditions." While she negotiated, Aila noticed one of the mining technicians slipping away from the group, heading toward the document room they had cleared out the night before. She nudged Miguel, who nodded his understanding and casually moved to intercept. Thomas had also noticed. He caught Aila's eye and gave an almost imperceptible nod before approaching Mercer. "Robert," he said, using the director's first name, "I worked with these people for years. Their cooperation would make everything easier. Perhaps a compromise." Mercer seemed annoyed by Thomas's intervention, but maintained his professional demeanor. "What sort of compromise?" "Let them designate 10% of the canyon as completely restricted, their most sacred sites. Survey everywhere else without interference." Nahimana shot Thomas a look of betrayal, but he continued, "In exchange, they provide historical context for your environmental impact statement. Makes the regulatory approval smoother." Mercer considered this, obviously calculating advantages. 15% maximum restriction, and we pick one spot within that area for core samples. No drilling whatsoever in the restricted zone, Thomas countered. That's non-negotiable. The negotiation had created enough distraction for Miguel to steer the wandering technician away from the document room. He engaged the man in conversation, pointing towards some petroglyphs on a distant wall. Mercer finally nodded. "Very well. Ms. Nahimana can mark her restricted areas on our survey map. But we begin work immediately on the unrestricted zones." As Nahimana reluctantly agreed, Aila felt the memory stick pressing against her leg through her pocket. A modern artifact containing the truth her mother had died protecting. Somehow, she needed to get it out of Shadow Canyon and into the right hands. But first, they needed to keep Atlas mining away from the aquifer's most vulnerable points, at least until help could arrive. By mid-afternoon, the mining team had established their base camp and begun preliminary scans in the unrestricted areas. Nahimana had cleverly marked the map to protect the most critical sections of the aquifer, but Aila knew it was merely a temporary solution. She sat with Miguel and Keme at the edge of the residential compound, discussing options in hushed tones. "We need to get word out," Aila said, touching the memory stick in her pocket. "This contains everything necessary to fight them legally, but it's useless here in the canyon." "The Eastern Trail," Keme suggested. "It's steep but passable. Leads to the highway eventually. How long would it take?" Miguel asked. "A full day's hike for someone who knows the way." Aila shook her head. "Too long. By then, they might find something with their scanners." Their conversation halted abruptly at the sound of approaching engines, different from the mining company's vehicles. Everyone turned toward the canyon entrance. 2 tribal police SUVs appeared on the access road, dust billowing behind them. "Reinforcements?" Miguel wondered hopefully. Keme stood, shading his eyes. "Tribal authorities. But who called them?" The vehicles stopped near the village center. From the passenger side of the first SUV emerged a figure that made Aila's heart skip. Grandfather Heyman, leaning heavily on his carved walking stick. "No," she breathed. "How did he find us?" Beside him stood a uniformed tribal police officer wearing a badge that caught the sunlight. 2 more officers exited the second vehicle. Mercer approached the newcomers with obvious concern. "This is a permitted operation on federal land," he began immediately. The lead officer ignored him, speaking instead to Nahimana, who had hurried to meet them. "Elder Nahimana, we received reports of unauthorized personnel in protected ancestral territory." "What unauthorized personnel?" Mercer demanded. "We have all necessary permits." "I wasn't referring to your team, Mr. Mercer," the officer replied coolly. "I was referring to the two missing teenagers who left a false trail about their whereabouts." Grandfather Hayman's gaze found Aila, his expression an unreadable mixture of relief, anger, and something deeper, recognition. "Perhaps, Grandfather," Aila said, approaching hesitantly. "I can explain." Later, he replied, his voice gravelly with emotion. Then, to everyone's surprise, he turned to Nahimana. "Sister, it has been too long." Nahimana's stern face softened. 20 years, brother. You look old, as do you." A ghost of a smile touched his lips before fading. "Those circumstances are not ideal for a reunion." Mercer looked between them with growing comprehension. "You're Aila Redfeather, the former chief who abandoned this place." Grandfather straightened, dignity emanating from his aging frame. "I never abandoned Shadow Canyon. I protected my people by relocating them from danger." His gaze hardened. "Danger your company brought then, as now." The lead officer intervened. "Mr. Mercer, I need to verify your permits. Recent tribal council resolutions may affect their validity. My permits are federal, not tribal," Mercer responded dismissively. "Nevertheless, as this operation borders recognized ancestral territory, there are consultation requirements." The officer's badge glinted as he produced official documentation. "These papers temporarily suspend all activities pending review." Mercer's professional facade cracked slightly. "This is outrageous interference. Our lawyers will... Your lawyers can contact tribal legal affairs." The officer remained impassive. "Until then, all scanning operations are suspended." Aila couldn't believe the sudden turn of events. She approached her grandfather while the officer continued addressing Mercer. "How did you find us?" she whispered. "Miguel's note mentioned following your mother's diary. Where else would that lead but here?" Grandfather's eyes held decades of pain. "I knew someday you would find your way to Shadow Canyon. I just didn't expect it so soon. Why didn't you ever tell me about this place? About who we are? To protect you from this." He gestured toward the mining team. "From their greed and the burden of knowledge." Thomas approached cautiously, nodding respectfully to Grandfather Hayman. "Chief Redfeather." "Your timing is fortunate. Not chief anymore, Thomas." Grandfather studied his old acquaintance. "You walk with the miners now?" "Not by choice." Thomas glanced toward Mercer, who was arguing heatedly with the police officer. "Much has happened since you left." Nahimana joined them, creating a circle that somehow felt ceremonial. The old leadership reunited after decades apart. "The suspension is temporary," she said quietly. "Their lawyers will overcome it within days." Grandfather nodded. "But it gives us time to implement stronger measures." He turned to Aila. "Elena left something for you, didn't she?" "Something besides the diary." Aila glanced at Thomas, who nodded almost imperceptibly. She withdrew the memory stick. "Everything she discovered about the aquifer, evidence of their past violations, legal documentation, then we have work to do." Grandfather reached for the device with surprising urgency. "This must reach the right people immediately." The lead officer approached their group. "We've secured a temporary cessation of activities. Dr. Redfeather, the tribal chairman, is expecting your call." Aila looked at her grandfather in surprise. "Doctor?" "There is much you don't know about me, little bird." Grandfather pocketed the memory stick. "Including that before retirement I was the tribe's legal counsel with a specialization in water rights." Nahimana actually smiled. "My brother always believed in fighting on multiple fronts. And now," Grandfather said, his voice strengthening with purpose, "we will finish what Elena started." He looked at his granddaughter with newfound respect. With the help of the daughter who found her way home. Across the plaza, Mercer watched their reunion with cold calculation in his eyes. Whatever temporary victory they had won, Aila sensed the real battle was just beginning. Night fell on Shadow Canyon, bringing an uneasy calm. The mining team remained at their camp under the watchful eyes of tribal police. While the canyon residents gathered in the council building for an emergency meeting, Aila sat beside her grandfather. Still processing the day's revelations, Elder Nahimana presided over the gathering, wearing a ceremonial necklace of polished shells and turquoise that gleamed in the lamplight. Aila recognized it from old photographs in her mother's diary, the traditional adornment of tribal leadership during crucial decisions. "We face a turning point," Nahimana began, her fingers touching the ancient shells. "For generations, we protected Shadow Canyon through secrecy and isolation. Today, that protection has failed." Murmurs rippled through the assembled group. 23 residents, 3 tribal police officers, and the 3 outsiders, Aila, Miguel, and Thomas, whose status remained ambiguous. Grandfather Heyman spoke next, his voice stronger than Aila had heard in months. "The temporary injunction buys us days, not weeks. Atlas Mining has powerful allies and teams of lawyers. They will return. Then we must use this time wisely," Keme urged. "Evacuate our most sacred objects. Prepare to defend our land. Defend how?" Jacob, the eldest council member, challenged. "With 23 people against corporate might. Against government agencies they've bought?" Nahimana's shell necklace clicked softly as she shifted. "Heyman, what does Elena's research tell us? What legal grounds do we have?" Grandfather had spent hours reviewing the memory stick's contents on a laptop provided by the tribal police. "Elena documented 3 critical findings," he explained. "First, the aquifer's unique mineral composition creates medicinal properties scientifically verifiable and potentially patentable. Second, she mapped how mining operations would contaminate not just our water, but drinking sources across 3 counties. Third, and most damaging to Atlas, she found evidence they previously falsified environmental impact statements. "Is it enough to stop them permanently?" Thomas asked. "With the right legal strategy and public pressure, yes." Grandfather's expression hardened. "But there's a greater question we must address, one that has divided us for 20 years. The room grew still, tension thickening the air. "Shadow Canyon's future," Nahimana acknowledged. "Do we remain in hiding, or do we reclaim our heritage openly?" The question ignited immediate debate. Some argued passionately for continued secrecy. Their best protection had always been staying hidden from the modern world. Others countered that isolation had left them vulnerable, without allies when threats emerged. Aila listened, understanding now the choice her mother had faced, the same choice that had separated Nahimana and her grandfather decades ago. "May I speak?" she finally asked. All eyes turned to her. The outsider who carried their bloodline. Nahimana nodded, the shell necklace catching lamplight. "Elena's daughter has earned the right to be heard." Aila stood, surprising herself with a sudden sense of clarity. "For my whole life, I knew nothing of Shadow Canyon or my heritage. My mother kept this place secret to protect me, but in doing so, she also denied me knowledge of who I am." She looked around the room, meeting each gaze directly. "Secrets didn't save this place. They only left you isolated when danger came." Murmurs of both agreement and dissent filled the room. "The world has changed," Aila continued. "Today, visibility can provide protection that secrecy cannot. If this place becomes known, not as a mining site, but as a cultural treasure and ecological wonder, it becomes harder to destroy." "The girl speaks wisdom," Jacob admitted reluctantly. "Darkness hides both predator and prey. Sometimes light is better protection. What exactly are you proposing?" Gem asked. Aila hadn't planned this far, but words came nonetheless. "Establish Shadow Canyon as an official cultural heritage site. Document the aquifer as a scientific marvel. Invite researchers who will value it for knowledge rather than profit. Build alliances with environmental groups." She paused. "Stop hiding and start fighting in the open." Grandfather Heyman watched her with undisguised pride. "You sound like your mother." Eleanor believed in this path, Thomas added quietly. "It's why she documented everything so meticulously. Not just to fight in court, but to share with the world what makes this place sacred." Nahimana rose, the shell necklace gleaming as she approached Aila. "Your mother's spirit speaks through you. But understand what you're asking. Once revealed, Shadow Canyon can never return to Shadow. Our ways, our privacy, our sovereignty, all will be challenged by the outside world." "They're already challenged," Aila replied. At least this way, we choose the terms of engagement." The elder studied her for a long moment, then removed the ancient shell necklace and, to everyone's astonishment, placed it around Aila's neck. "In our tradition," Nahimana explained, "when wisdom comes from unexpected sources, we honor it." The shells felt cool against Aila's skin. "The decision before us has always been one of remembering or forgetting, hiding or proclaiming." Grandfather stood, joining them. "I chose safety through separation 20 years ago. Perhaps that was necessary then. But now," he looked at his granddaughter with new eyes, "now perhaps it's time for a different path." The prophecy speaks of balance restored when the chief's granddaughter returns, Jacob reminded them. "Perhaps this is what it meant. Not hiding, not running, but a new way forward." Nahimana turned to the assembled council. "We must vote on our future. Do we remain in shadow, or do we step into the light?" As hands began to rise, Aila felt the weight of the shell necklace, and with it the weight of history, of responsibility, of belonging. Whatever they decided, she knew with sudden certainty that her life had changed forever. Shadow Canyon was part of her now, its burden and its blessing impossible to ignore. 6 months later, Aila stood on the canyon rim, watching the sunset paint the ancient walls with golden light. Below, Shadow Canyon pulsed with renewed life, not just the 23 original residents, but visitors, researchers, and tribal members reconnecting with their heritage. The transformation had been remarkable. After the council's historic vote to step into the light, events had unfolded with surprising speed. Elena's research, combined with Grandfather Heyman's legal expertise, had created a formidable case against Atlas Mining. When faced with potential criminal charges for environmental violations, the company had withdrawn their claims, settling for a substantial payout to the tribe in exchange for legal immunity. But the greater victory had been the canyon's recognition as a protected cultural landmark. Under joint tribal and federal management, Shadow Canyon was now both a sacred site and a research center studying its unique aquifer, the lifeblood that connected countless desert springs. Aila opened her new leather-bound journal, its handcrafted cover a gift from Nahimana. Unlike her mother's diary of maps and directions, Aila's pages contained observations, conversations, and reflections, a living record of Shadow Canyon's rebirth. "I thought I'd find you up here," Miguel said, climbing the last few feet to join her at the lookout point. He'd been visiting regularly, dividing his time between the reservation school and weekend trips to the canyon. "Just writing," Aila replied, making space for him on the stone outcropping. "Trying to capture everything before I head back tomorrow." Her life had found a new rhythm, weekdays with grandfather at home, weekends at Shadow Canyon learning tribal history and traditions. The arrangement satisfied both her modern education and her newfound heritage. "Did you hear about Thomas?" Miguel asked. Aila nodded. After testifying against Atlas Mining's environmental violations, Thomas had finally returned to the canyon permanently. "Nahimana says he's building a house near the Eastern Spring. Took 20 years, but he finally came home." Home. The word resonated differently now. Aila had 2 homes, the reservation house where she'd grown up, and this ancient canyon that carried her bloodline. Below, she could see Grandfather Heyman leading a group of tribal elders through the ruins. His health had improved dramatically since reclaiming his connection to Shadow Canyon. Though he still officially lived on the reservation, his presence in the canyon grew more frequent. "Sometimes I wonder what Mom would think of all this," Aila said quietly, running her fingers over her journal's leather cover. "Everything she kept secret is now so public." "She'd be proud," Miguel assured her. "The aquifer is protected. The community is thriving. Her research is being continued by actual scientists." He was right. The university research station established near the springs was expanding Elena's work, documenting the unique mineral properties that made the water so special. Preliminary studies suggested potential medical applications that could benefit people far beyond Shadow Canyon's walls. "Chem's waiting for us," Miguel reminded her. "Something about a ceremony before you leave?" They made their way down to the village center, where canyon residents had gathered in the plaza. At the center stood Nahimana, grandfather Haman, and Keme, who had emerged as the younger generation's leader. Aila Redfeather, Nahimana called as they approached. Come forward, the gathering parted to create a path. Aila walked through, acutely aware of how much had changed since she'd first stumbled into this place following her mother's diary. Nahimana held a small clay pot containing water from the sacred spring. 6 months ago, you brought change to Shadow Canyon. You challenged us to remember our past while embracing our future. Grandfather Haman continued, Today, we honor your role in our community's new path. Though you divide your time between two worlds, you carry our stories with you. He gestured to her journal. Keme stepped forward, holding a small silver medallion on a leather cord. This belonged to your mother. She wore it during her research expeditions here. He placed it around Aila's neck. Now it returns to her daughter, who continues her work. The simple ceremony concluded with Nahimana using spring water to mark Aila's forehead. May you always find your way back to Shadow Canyon, daughter of Elena, granddaughter of Haman, carrier of memory. That night, beside a community bonfire, stories flowed freely, tales of ancestors, of the canyon's history, of Elena's determination to protect the lifeblood. No longer secrets, but treasures shared and remembered. Later, in the quiet of her small room, Sila opened her journal one last time before sleep. By lamplight, she wrote, Today I understood what Mom tried to tell me through her diary. Some burdens become lighter when shared. Some treasures grow more valuable when others recognize their worth. Shadow Canyon was never meant to remain hidden forever, just protected until the right time came. I don't know if I'm truly the granddaughter from the prophecy or just a girl who found her mother's map. But I do know that the stories will continue now, flowing like the lifeblood beneath our feet, connecting past to future. Tomorrow I return to school, to homework and normal teenage life. But part of me remains here, just as part of Shadow Canyon now lives within me. The diary led me here, but it's my own journey now. Aila closed the journal and placed it carefully beside her bed. Outside, the canyon walls stood silent under starlight, as they had for centuries. But they no longer kept secrets. They told stories, and Aila's story was now among them, written in the legacy her mother had left behind and the future she herself would help create.